Hey everyone, I'm Superfizz. It is March 9th, 2022. I am here with the fine folks from the Rocket Pool trading community, and specifically Jasper. And so there's some really cool stuff going on, and Jasper's going to walk us through this new curve pool. And it's going to be great because I don't do DeFi. I'm so obsessed with base layer like beacon chain that I don't get into DeFi. But because Rocket Pool is something that I do support deeply, I'm interested to learn more about this, and hopefully you can learn and we'll all share it together. So welcome, Jasper.
Yeah, thank you for that intro. I just want to say before we get started that a lot of this information and knowledge I've come to know has been through interacting with the lovely people in the trading Discord channel. Definitely check it out. So what is this pool? Where are we? To set the stage, when Ethereum first launched, it was somewhat difficult for people who weren't already in the know to participate in staking. Running a node is somewhat difficult, especially early on, and the other options for people who didn't have the technical expertise were quite limited. Unfortunately, as time has progressed, that hasn't changed a whole lot. There have been more protocols and platforms that have launched to make things easier, to make things more permissionless, accessible. However, the market hasn't caught up. Currently, the market is dominated by centralized exchanges and permissioned staking providers. What we need to do is, unfortunately, find a way to drive yield towards a decentralized future. That's sort of what has driven most of the stake where it's ended up. It's the accessibility of yield. So my goal has been to create a pool that maximizes yield while maximizing decentralization ethos. And this is what I came up with, with the help of many others, again, through the trading channel, specifically shout outs to Marsu, Noshua, and Thomas G. Anyway, this pool is a pairing between wrapped ETH, Rocket ETH being the Rocket Pool liquid staking token, and wrapped staked Lido ETH. These two tokens represent two of the major staking protocols in the space. By putting them together in a single curve pool, we can lower the amount of ETH provided on one single platform and also create a more capital efficient product. So this pool is now live. To read more about all that I've just said, I have this one article on Mirror called "One Pool to Rule Them All."
That was so well written. Like it really, as I began reading it, I was like, crap, this is going to be too heady for me. But then you broke it down so well. I'm not going to claim that I totally get how it works, but the article was extremely well written.
Thank you. The main goal long-term for this pool is to replace the Yearn Vault for the Curve stETH token. Essentially, that wraps into a nice compact package called the Y-Curve stETH token. This token is widespread throughout all of DeFi as a very common collateral asset. And unfortunately, because it's so common, sort of like a power law thing, it's re-amplified Lido's position in the space. And this is a way to hopefully long-term change that.
So I have a little bit of a question. Like, I don't know how. Okay, so I am pro decentralization. I'm not anti Lido.
Correct.
How is someone had suggested this is kind of like a vampire attack against Lido? That feels like maybe it's not the ethos I'm looking for. Can you help me understand that?
I think part of the problem is that we're in a situation where there's one market participant that has such an overwhelming share in liquid staking. Lido has, and stETH token specifically has 90% of the market share. And then all the other competing applications have between 2 and 4. In this environment, any approach that tries to maximize a protocol's reach is going to end up looking a bit like a vampire because it specifically has to take away from essentially
because they own the market.
Yeah. Right. So it's a vampire only in the sense that there's only one person where we can really pull from.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. In long term, I believe there's a good reason to expand. I also make the argument that this is a short term thing. Eventually, we want to expand the basket. We want to make it more inclusive for other protocols who are diverse. It's like
Okay.
long term, I don't want rETH and stETH to be the only things in the pool.
But they are right now the liquid staking tokens.
I think there's good. Yeah.
What about StakeWise's token? How does that apply?
Right. Why do I privilege Rocket ETH instead of the other tokens currently, essentially? Well, I think it just comes down to the nature of the permission node operators. If we have the ability to, there's two major reasons. One, the terms of like how a curve pool works between multiple assets. It's going to work better with just two for now. The other one being that if we can maximize the permissionless protocol, that's the one I think we ought to for now.
Yeah.
Right. Lido we have to include because it is the dominant market participant, even though it's permissioned. That's not a quality we should espouse in our pool in the future. Like in the future,
Sure.
we should try to include protocols that meet the same standards as Rocket Pool. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. And it wasn't my intention is to be inclusive of all honest operators. But again, we share that desire to further decentralize the network. And so I can see where the intention would be to look for decentralizing forces and not fall back to unnecessarily centralizing forces.
Right.
Great.
So just some stats about this curve pool. It launched just a few days ago, and our TVL is now at 5.8 million USD with no rewards.
Are you able to screen share? Because I don't really use. For people who know me, like, yes, I'm obsessed with Ethereum, but I don't really use like Curve. I don't use DeFi portals. And I don't know how odd that seems to others, but DeFi is just not something that I'm deep into.
So here's the article I mentioned earlier. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, and I want to point out for anybody who's interested, you can support Jasper's creation of this article. Oh, I didn't see my name there. By collecting his NFT. I accidentally bought two, and I'm like, screw it, he's worth it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so this pool talks about this article. I go into the history, starting with the history. You can see here Lido's current dominance, more than Coinbase or Binance, which is somewhat insane to think about. And this is just a screenshot representing why Rocket Pool is included. 853 node operators. Yes, about a quarter of them are all nodes. However, it's still by far the most decentralized protocol for staking Ethereum. And
I love the commitment to adding others, because one of the things, yes, I do promote Rocket Pool all day long, and I'm not going to stop, but I do really want to see other operators in the space who are seeking to decentralize the staking on the beacon chain. And so though I'm not aware of it yet, I really look forward to a solid competitor to Rocket Pool. And I don't think that takes away anything from them. I think it adds to the further decentralization of the network.
Right. I think you said it best in one of your tweets, where we should promote protocols to be expand, but not so much go above a 20% mark.
Yeah. And that's, I didn't just make that up. That's something that I've been chatting about in back channels with a lot of leaders. And it seems like, and there's a little thing with Lido now where people, it's being broken down into its individual operators, but their governance really does control 21% of the network, in the same way that Rocket Pool's governance controls 1% of the network. And it's important that we acknowledge the governance impact without only referring to the individual operators.
Sorry, I missed the last bit of that.
I was just saying that no, that's fine. It's important that with Lido that we recognize the full scope of their governance, controlling 21% of validators, not only looking at their operators, because in the dashboard that I'm thinking of, their operators have been disambiguated so that they are now listed as individual operators that are small. But Lido controls 20% of that governance in the same way that Rocket Pool controls 1% of that governance. And the standard that we as a community should seek is no service or no governance model controlling more than 20%.
Yeah, I remember one of the early Rocket Pool Lido Coinbase interviews, and at one point, the Lido representative, I don't recall their name, mentioning how scary it was that they were accumulating all of this governance power because it was a responsibility. Insofar as just the fiscal responsibility, you now have this greater duty to be abreast of all the issues in the Ethereum space. It's a serious issue.
And I don't fault any, I don't fault any provider who has that kind of power. Like that is the design of business, is to accumulate more power, but it's also the responsibility of community to kind of put the brakes on that and keep it decentralized. So they do their job, we'll do our job.
Yeah. So this Etherscan page right here shows our current TVL. And I just wanted to point something out to any listeners. Be careful of MEV activity and arbitrage. If you look here, MEV, 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 all of these are really following substantial deposits that are slightly imbalanced. And a lot of this can be avoided activity. I wrote this article here, Safe Aping, that is going to really talk about how curve pools work. Or sorry, what you need to know. Can you scroll
to the top of that chart? Oh, okay, sorry.
This other scan page?
Yeah, is that denominated in ETH? Is that an MEV extraction of 17 rocket pool tokens? Okay.
Mm-hmm. So
okay, I'm sorry.
The way it's written here,
that's a big haul.
This is not how much they here. Let's look at one of these. Sure. Okay. Here's the actual. Well, here's what's actually happening. So it starts with what it looks like buying wrapped stETH on Balancer, trading it for rETH on Curve, and then selling that Curve for wrapped ETH again at the end for a profit of 0.04 ETH.
Yeah.
It's good for the pool. Good for the pool, and that bot's gonna bot. It's gonna keep the pool balanced. However, users will end up getting siphoned a little bit. And why? Well, pool is currently out of balance. So if any MEV searcher right now is listening, you can probably arbitrage the pool right now. This ratio is a bit off, 75-25. Rocket Pool's token launched, as we know, several months after Lido's token. Because Lido's token launched first, wrapped staked ETH is worth a little bit more. For one wrapped staked ETH, you get about 1.04. The exchange rate right now is off. This should be slightly different. I don't remember the exact amount it should be, but I think slightly lower. Right now, you can add wrapped stETH. There's too much wrapped stETH in the pool right now. So you can buy cheap wrapped stETH. The balance of the pool is supposed to be around 77% rETH, 23% wrapped stETH. And this ratio is simply the ratio of their values against ETH. No, not quite. It's a bit more complicated than that because of the curve on curve. So the value ends up being this due to some simulations Nosha ran on how the curve works for stable swaps. We don't really need to get into that. The important thing to know is at the balanced state, it should be 77% rETH, 23% wrapped stETH. When you as a depositor are depositing, you should be checking to see how much you shift this by. If you shift this to about where it is now, you are at risk of being arbitraged, and then you will end up sort of getting less LP tokens than you should have. Now, that was a lot of talking. Did that make sense, Fizz?
Some of it.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess for me as a layperson, I can get the recommendation to deposit in the correct ratio. And I really have to take it at face value that I'm getting the LP that I deserve. I wouldn't even know how to check to see if I got enough LP tokens in return.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the complexities of Curve UI. If you want to look at a very similar pool to ours for a bit more assurance, the the convex Curve token, I can pull that up actually in a second here. This pool is older than ours, has more TVL than ours, but has a similar price discrepancy towards ours. And they also have a similar imbalance in their pool. However, unfortunately, you are right that as a layperson, it is hard to.
Well, and again, getting back to my lack of experience with DeFi, it's not, I ape into stuff just being a goofball, but I also know how to get with a community and say, hey, what's the rational action here? And that tends to pay off well.
Yeah, that's definitely the right attitude. If you're someone that's looking to deposit, come by trading, ask, people will be there to help you. Okay. So this is the convex curve. And you can see that this pool is also very out of balance, 21 to 78, and also has a non-1-to-1 factor. These are directly related to each other. So
can you tell a little, I'm sorry, what's happening tonight? Why are we excited?
Yeah, what actually is happening? Today marks a special start. I'm looking for a quote here. Tetranode, famed DeFi personality. Some people like his personality, some people don't. That's up to you. However, he is quite powerful in the ecosystem. He has a lot.
And he's definitely a friend of Rocket Pool. So
he is. We are in his gauntlet. We are one of the chosen protocols. And that has some benefits, some real benefits. Namely, Tetranode has 2 million VECRV tokens. Vote escrow curve. People who hold vote escrow curve or vote locked convex tokens can use their tokens to vote on emissions. VE curve tokens vote on CRV emissions. So every pool gets some percent of the daily curve emissions. There are millions given out every day. These voters determine what pool gets what percent. Tetranode, having about 2 million VECRV, has about 0.5% of the entire voting block. 0.5% of the daily issuance gives us about 8,000 USD worth of CRV tokens per day. Annualized, that is around $3 million. Obviously, the incentives will not last that long, but for APY calculations, that's important because it means we can support a pretty massive TVL thanks to Tetranode's charity. And I might like to add, this is in some regards charity, as people often sell their voting power. And Tetranode, instead of choosing to sell his voting power, is just voting in our favor. So thank you, Tetranode.
And so in all fairness, is that altruism or is he benefiting in a different way?
Yeah, so Tetranode obviously does have a conflict of interest in that he's sort of just supporting a protocol he's invested in. I wouldn't say conflict of interest, but he is definitely benefiting from this pool doing well, in theory.
But regardless, he's a friend of Rocket Pool, so he's supporting what we're doing as well.
Yes. I also probably guarantee he would make more money selling this. He makes about 20,000 curve tokens every 2 weeks or something. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah. But that means we're going to have a pretty crazy APY. And I can show you what that should be. This is the Curve Gauge site. Their website UI needs a whole revamp. And with just Tetranode's contribution, we should be going from a 0% APY from CRV emissions to somewhere around 52% base APY from CRV tokens.
Wow. So based on advice, I'm not sure who said it. I deposited my LP tokens into Convex. Do I still get the rewards even though my LP is staked?
Yeah, so that gets a bit confusing. What does Convex do?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So there are three choices of what you can do once you get your LP tokens. I'm gonna take a sip of water real quick.
Okay, and so for the big picture, because sometimes I struggle to grasp this stuff, we are taking 25% of rETH and 75. Okay, 23% rETH, 77%.
Other way.
Okay, 23% wrapped staked stETH and 23% rETH, and we are depositing it into Curve Factory 89, which is that wstETH and rETH curve pool. And after we do that, we're getting LP tokens that are going to earn this exciting interest rate for we don't know how long.
Weeks, as well as trading fees.
Okay, as well as trading fees from that pool. And we're also going to take those LP tokens. And so I think I may have deposited like one rETH, and I think I got like one LP token. And then I took that to Convex and deposited it there. And that's where we're at now. You're going to explain what happens after we deposit at Convex.
Yes. Okay. I think I'm probably going to step back a bit before I answer that directly, just
Please
for
do.
Order. Yeah. So you have your LP tokens. You have three options. You can stake with Curve, you can stake with Convex, or you can stake with Yearn. Yearn, not yet live, but we'll get there. We'll talk about it. If you stake with Curve, you have the least smart contract risk because you're using the same protocol that you've been using. You will be earning your rewards immediately. You stake with Curve and you can claim your CRV emissions. I'm pretty sure as soon as the first hour is done because they release CRV tokens quite quickly. If you have your own vote escrow CRV tokens, if you are a member of Curve governance, you will get a boost to your rewards. And in this case, it might be worth staking with Curve. Essentially, the more involved with the Curve ecosystem you are, the more it's worth it to stake with Curve. However, for most of us, we are not big Curve whales. For us, it is usually better to stake with Convex. What Convex does is they give you a native multiplier, which is the governance multiplier. Because Convex has so much vote escrow CRV already, they let you use that boost. However, by getting that boost, you pay a fee, as well as the rewards have a different distribution mechanism. Instead of being paid out immediately, it's sort of Convex as a group has this harvest schedule. And so it's less frequently given out, but more equitably across a time period. So early LPs will have more advantage staking with Curve. However, late LPs will find that it's more fair in Convex. So there was a few different topics there.
How frequently does Convex pay out? Ish.
You know, it's a 1 week delay in total. However, it's a metered distribution. It's very unclear. The docs do not do a good job of this. Sure. I even tried trying to get more clarity in the support section. However, it's weird.
But then I'm gonna. What do they pay out in? Are they Convex
CRV tokens? It's the same CRV.
Okay. And then I can hold or sell those, and they're essentially free.
Yep. And that's a pretty good deal. It gives you the boost. However, they take a fee. The third option is Yearn. Yearn's main call or draw is that it'll auto compound your tokens. So instead of you having exposure to the CRV, they'll take it, sell it, and buy more of the LP token.
Interesting.
However, for doing that, they take a pretty huge cut. Flat 2% APY, and then 20% of remaining APY.
20% of remaining APY.
So yeah, if the pool was a 6% APY, they would take a flat 2% out of that, and then 20% of whatever's left.
Okay. But if you wanted to set it and forget it for 10 years, and either it passes or fails, then that would be the best choice.
Additionally, the Yearn vault also gives you the Yearn token, which being auto compounding and essentially just direct exposure to the underlying makes it great collateral.
Okay. That's I did use Convex just because that was the suggestion, but for
Yearn is also not live.
Oh, okay, good. If I'm going to do that kind of deposit, I really like I'm not going to keep up with it every week. It feels like too big of a hassle. And I'm not going in deep. I'm like, 1 ETH. So I like to do those in like a 10-year, like, let's come back. And it probably was vulnerable and probably got drained at some point, but maybe it didn't. So,
yeah.
But I could still at some point in the future, if I chose to, withdraw from Convex and switch to Yearn, as long as I'm willing to pay gas, right?
Exactly. It's
Okay.
about a $40 gas fee at 30 Gwei. The staking is the most gas intensive part.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I expect gas to come down to 5 Gwei in the next few, whatever. Not really, but
I think there's some messages in chat. That's Kevster. What do you mean short term? It's better to stake with Curve. Yeah, so this is confusing, and this is not something I knew originally. When you stake with Curve, your rewards are doled out immediately. I thought the same was true for Convex. However, it's not. They sort of like aggregate funds and then do this weird harvest cycle that makes it so that if you're an early LP, you won't get this the greater benefit, essentially. It is more equitable over a larger time period to be in Convex. However, for the best early rewards, you want to be in Curve. This only really matters though if you have large amounts, because you're going to end up with lower APY over time with Curve if you don't have VE Curve. Right, as yeah. Short term better, however, the math of trying to figure out the optimal strategy here is not worth it. Is this the first one of the, when's the last time you've aped into something DeFi related, Fizz, before this?
Oh, I mean, I don't ever go in deeply, and I don't pay a lot of attention to it. But I do, every week or something, I do something interesting.
Nice.
But I don't spend a lot of time obsessing over DeFi like I do the beacon chain. So for example, I'm playing, it's NFT, not DeFi, but I'm playing an NFT game now, and I'm not obsessed with it, but it's Cryptogs, and I play with it while it's interesting, but then I will very quickly move back to the beacon chain because that's what obsesses me.
For a quick tirade onto the beacon chain, the kiln went live today on the DevNet.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Well, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Shoot, yes. So Kiln is the last major test of the merge spec before it goes live. If anyone remembers the Madasha testnet from 2 years ago before we launched the beacon chain, Kiln is a kind of equivalent to that. It is the main net pre-check. Hey, Thomas, glad to see you.
Hey,
pool party.
And so just today, Perry announced, or was it Marius? Let me check. Announced it was Perry, announced the Kiln testnet dev page. It is at, I wish I wasn't falling apart, kiln.themerge.dev, and you can go there and find all the resources that you need to get live on the Kiln testnet. That will run a few weeks, a few months until we get all of the final bugs worked out. And so ETHStaker will definitely be doing a video about participating with Kiln. There will definitely be a POAP for people who participate, and it will be one of those like super valuable things in the future because people who participate with Kiln have a deep investment in the success of the beacon chain. And so I really hope everybody here, everybody who watches this, finds a machine and participates with Kiln.
Would you say this is one of the most important testnets, devnets yet to test out?
Oh, this is the granddaddy. Now it's done, it's ready to ship. This testnet will determine whether or not they're ready to upgrade the existing testnets. there's always the potential that it could crash and burn. That's not expected. Everything is running really smoothly. But I can't say it's the last one, but every indication is that this is the last major test before we start upgrading existing test nets and then move on to mainnet. This is very optimistic for having the full beacon chain merge in the northern hemisphere summer, which is June, July, August timeframe. So things are looking great. Very excited.
So everyone go break the DevNet, but if you're going to break it, please do it now, not in 2 months.
Yeah.
Or 1 month, or however long it's lasting.
And so what we need to do, we need to get a lot of people, a lot of us, a lot of normal people trying this test net. We need to see a lot of traffic on it. We need people, developers to deploy it, dApps on it. We need to stress it out and make sure that if something breaks that it can be corrected now. I don't really expect that because, well, I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic, but I know that things have been so well planned that personally, I think it will run smoothly. Of course, we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, it's exciting to actually be here.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that the beacon chain launched over a year ago. Like it's been a while, but it also seems like such a new thing still.
I wrote a little bit about how deceiving it can be, that it seems like the beacon chain has been here for quite a while now, and it seems so set in stone and secure, but really it's on its baby feet.
Yeah. Well, it has run so well this year. And the only real concerns we've had are with client diversity, and we're doing a lot to try to mitigate that. Rocket Pool has done a lot to mitigate that, and it's another great thing that Rocket Pool is bringing to the network. But I would still love to see more decentralization in the network. I'd love to see more people running validators at home. I'd love to see fewer people relying on data centers and exchanges. But that's an education piece, and it'll come in time.
Yeah, that data center question is going to get much more interesting once dank sharding rolls are out, if it does.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not ready to tackle it. It's one of those things that kind of gives me nightmares. But I know that the open source community is very active in developing solutions that decentralize the network. And really our role is just educating users on how to choose those solutions. So I'm not too worried about it.
What's the conflict there between dank sharding and hosted services?
I don't think it's necessarily hosted services. From my understanding, dank sharding is going to increase the requirements to run validators, like the hardware, pretty substantially.
I see. So it'll just become, it may become more costly to where using a host server isn't feasible or cost prohibitive.
I think the goal is to wait till test nets and see what it looks like on hardware. But I don't want to jump the gun before that. Like let's take time. There are always lots of optimizations. The last thing I want people to do is like panic and make a hasty choice that, those hasty choices are always toward decentralization. Hasty choices are never about the health of the network and decentralization. And so that's why I'm just like, slow down. We can handle this. Everything's going to be fine.
Thomas, while we have you here, is there anything you want to say about the curve pool as essentially our initial LP? You took on a pretty substantial amount of the early risk. Thank you for that.
Yeah, happy to help out. Well, thank you for setting this all up. This has just been like kind of this brilliant DeFi engineering, setting up this whole chain of pools and getting Tetranode on board. It's super exciting. I'm excited to see what happens. I thought about aping in further, but figured the effect would be maximized if I held back and let newbies come in and chase the yield.
We'll need you protecting the peg, spinning up pools anyway, potentially.
Yes, that's the goal.
It's a very noble move.
Was that something we haven't talked about, actually? There is a potential that rETH will go off peg this week.
It already
Um,
kind of is a little
yeah.
bit. Have you seen Balancer?
No, there used to be a site that shows the pegs on different places. Do you know where that is?
It's the Rocket Pool Explorer.
Yeah, was that on Rocket Scan?
If I'm understanding this correctly, the peg will become imbalanced because users are buying it from the pools to participate in this curve pool.
There are two major activities. That is one of them. People who just genuinely have the desire to ape in, they are going to buy it up and potentially even accept a less than equitable price on rETH because the rewards are high. That's not going to be the main concern, however. Currently, the main concern is with people who are dumping in large amounts of unbalanced deposits. And that leads to MEV activity that directly boosts the rETH peg. We were actually looking some MEV transactions earlier that showed that they end up selling stETH on the market and buying rETH on the market. So it's the combination of those two forces. And here I got Rocket Scan. Let me share that.
I'm looking at Balancer right now too. 2 hours ago, or over the past 2 hours, someone pulled out 110 rETH from Balancer, and it looks like they're queued up and ready to throw it into Curve.
How much ETH?
110 rETH. So that's like more than that in ETH.
And the pool is how much at the moment?
Right now, the pool is 409 rETH and 626 wETH. So it's already pretty off peg. I don't know what
Nice.
the
So,
price
so
is.
basically they'll be adding 25% of the existing pool.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
And that's like not coming back for a while.
As Thomas pointed out, you can see here the pegs are already off by about 0.01 ETH across the board.
Yeah. Same with the Balancer.
Such a great resource.
Is this
On the
public
chase-
now that we can share it? I know that it was.
Oh,
we
no, I don't
requested
think
not
so.
to share it forever. Okay.
So
Yeah,
that site.
do we know that? Because I don't know. I've gotten mixed signals because I've seen him share it himself. So I've been kind of confused about that.
Well, if it's his, he can share it all he wants, but unless he gives us permission to share, then it's like, you know what I mean? Or we could always retweet.
Because I know I've shared it a few places before, and maybe that was a boo-boo.
Didn't Invis put it on his site, on his website?
Yeah, I saw that as well.
How did Invis make Rocket Scan?
No.
No, it was Petrus.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
Pieter, I think. I don't know.
Also, if anyone has questions about the curve pool, I'll probably stay around until a bit after the call ends, just in case.
I still don't know how to calculate how much VE curve I need to stake to maximize the reward.
Oh man, I wish
The
I
calculator I was
help with
looking at
that.
yesterday, like that had to be wrong because it was like a quarter of the CRV supply I would have to stake. Like that's not right.
It could just be like a very harshly diminishing curve that where no one can max it out.
That's what I thought, but even then it was like still like absurd numbers. I'm guessing it just didn't have the right data until the rewards are updated.
It's gonna be crazy that all of this is essentially without any individual spending any money. Like these rewards are about to flock probably over 10 million, tens of millions of TVL, and no one spent anything directly on incentives.
Yeah, I mean,
beautiful.
definitely opportunity cost from
Yeah,
Tetranode.
yeah.
But yeah.
In a vague sense, this is sort of just capital, making capital happen.
A little bit off topic, but I just saw D2 is on, and I would just like to say thank you for your service, D2, and relaying all the information to Reddit. You've been doing great with that, because I mean, I don't know if anybody else has been managing it, but I know you're the name that I usually see.
Yeah, happy to. It's the least I can do.
It's a thankless job.
What, that Zoom thing, did they, like, were they mad about the link being posted on Reddit, or was it just a warning?
It's common. It happens frequently. It's really just to protect us from being Zoom bombed. And I have been Zoom bombed in calls before by pretty aggressive trolls, and it's not like you can evangelize them about Rocket Pool. It's like they're just like drawing all over the screen and playing audio, and but yeah, it's really just a public service reminder. They didn't do anything to prevent the call.
Cardano army is going to attack.
Yeah, so one of the very first eStaker calls, before we figured out how to secure them, it was with Danny Ryan, actually. And we were really looking forward to it. And about 5 minutes in, there were like 200 unknowns just wreaking havoc in every direction they could. And it's like, well, it's been great. We're going to have to shut the call down. So everyone take care. And
you just have to reschedule at that point, right?
we didn't. I know it's hilarious, but I was talking to Danny later, and I'm like, Danny, were you on an eStaker call? He's like, yeah, for about 5 minutes one time. But it's funny because he's one of our favorite people, but we just, as many different rounds as we've made, we've never finished a complete call with him. So we may have to get back to that.
Would you like to give a short shout out to the call that's going to be following this one?
Oh yeah. Two of my passions are Rocket Pool and POAP. And so right after this call, at the top of the hour, I'll be participating in a Rocket Pool. I'm sorry, that's this one. A POAP community call with like DeFi Dude and Logic Beach, and
I'll be joining.
Hey, and Hanny, and all of you are welcome. We really just talk about what's new in POAP this week. So POAP is evolving really quickly, and yes, there will be a POAP for attending the call, but it's just a great chance to learn more about the ecosystem. And we really work to improve distribution quality. We want to improve the distribution of POAPs in the ecosystem, and just kind of maintain these high standards. So that is in the POAP Discord voice channel. So you all are welcome to attend. For anyone who doesn't know, there is a very tight link between Rocket Pool and POAP, and that link is Patricia Werthalter, who was and is the largest seed investor in Rocket Pool. And he's also the founder, one of the co-founders of POAP, and he does POAP full time now. So he was also an ETH staker, which is what I work with. He was an ETH staker with us for about a year. And so because of that, these communities are all very closely related now.
And then there was somewhat of this semi-natural obsession with POAPs that lasted months and months.
Yeah, it's funny. I wanted to bring POAP to Rocket Pool, and I tell myself that I was wildly successful because there was a feeding frenzy. Yeah. Well, I seeded that obsession with RPL rewards or bounties, and it was a ton of fun. I think by the end of it, everybody's like, okay, I'm a little worn out with it, but there is still that really strong commitment to POAP within Rocket Pool. And those are really some of my favorite POAPs. I know the Thomas G one, like I think half of them are now about Thomas. So congratulations. But
Yeah,
it was
that,
just so
that was
much
such a
fun.
warm welcome to the community. People started just making these POAPs, and that was a blast.
You
Yeah,
came at peak POAP.
I really did. They're
I
like every
remember
day.
your entry because Patricio messaged me and he's like, hey, there's a new guy, Thomas, just be nice to him. And I was like, okay. So we introduced you in POAP, and then suddenly you were a celebrity, and it was a ton of fun.
It's amazing.
It was interesting to see that post Patricio made on Twitter that almost sounded like he was stepping away from the platform, but I don't think he is.
No, because I messaged him like, what does this mean? Yeah, so yeah, he's essentially just giving up the design responsibility to a different group. And that's really healthy for the growth of POAP. They have onboarded a ton of employees. They are really staged for really great growth. But the thing you see with CEOs is that they tend to hoard responsibility, and they really have an obligation to kind of delegate that to teams as they grow. But also, as they delegate, they find other things on their plate, and they just end up buried with new things. So POAP with Patricio, with Isabel, is really developing in a healthy way. Very much looking forward to seeing what comes of it.
Who knows what some of these early rocket pool POAPs will allow you to do in the future.
Thomas, did you do POAP before Rocket Pool?
I think I got like one of the I had like one POAP from before Rocket Pool. I think it might have been an ETH staker one.
Okay. Cool.
But no,
Did you
basically no.
did you stake at all before starting rocket pool staking?
I have a single validator that I set up just to go through the motion, but not really.
Yeah,
So
mine
no
now
beacon chain
are.
valid.
I have both solo and Rocket Pool validators, and I love Thorsten Yorick Downs ETH Docker tool because I can now merge them on one machine, which is, I think if more people knew about that, they would be more comfortable doing that hybrid staking.
If it wasn't for Yorick, I probably wouldn't be staking now. He literally held my hand through the whole process. That was so nice of him.
Yes, he's definitely a superstar. So wildly intelligent about how all of these things work, and so easy to or like so open to like sharing it. And yeah, in fact, if I have questions, I'm like, I'm ashamed to ask this in public, but how does this work? And he's like, oh, no problem, let me tell you.
Also a phenomenal voice.
Yeah. That's I think about the quality of the ETH staker community. I'm sorry, the Rocket Pool community, like how everyone sort of, many people find a job and just kind of make it their responsibility. It's great to like, we have the whales, we have the LPs, we have people who are doing, POAPs and different community outreaches. The dashboard, I haven't seen VGR in a while, but like people end up in a role, like Al's being the resident troll. People end up in a role and just sort of do their job. It's very cool. I love how that works.
Right, and now that we have some semblance of a grant system set up, we might be better able to reward people for this sort of scattered system.
Yeah, I think
Shout out
that's very
to
healthy.
Shout out to Inviz's proposal for his bot on the governance forum.
It's
a great proposal,
very
in my opinion.
optimistic.
Oh god, I missed this.
It's everyone uses the bot. The team uses the bot a lot. It's not the most unreasonable in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve it, especially since he kind of, I don't know where I was going with that, but he's put in a lot of legwork.
Oh, wow. This is a
Can someone
ambitious
summarize it?
proposal.
Ambitious, that's a good word.
Long story short, he wants 3% of the PDA allocation for the next 12 rewards periods, which sums up to 3,700 RPL.
Partial back pay, partial maintenance of the bot.
That doesn't sound unreasonable.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot, but
it
like
doesn't sound unreasonable.
I use the bot all the time.
So
Yeah.
it's around 300 hours he's already put into it.
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
before it.
it's odd. I feel like it's easy to be sheepish about asking for what you're worth. But I also feel like people should know their worth and ask for that. And the worst that anyone can say is, you know, we see things differently, which is fine.
That's one thing I
Yeah.
really love about DAOs in general is you get a much flatter structure and people really do get paid what they're worth. In like normal startups, it's like the founding team gets like walks away with like 60% of the shares, and then like the first employee like will get 5% if they're lucky, and
Yeah.
that's just like not fair.
I mean,
And
Rocket Pool will
if
still have that
anything,
problem to some degree, just due to the nature of it being originally an ICO, and a large majority of the gains have already been begun. Arguably, though, we don't know if that's true. Hopefully not true.
yeah, I would say that there's a little bit of a multiplier on the fact that it's hard to get people to contribute. So that has its own premium. That, or at least I think that deserves its own premium.
We're getting pretty
There's-
close.
Sorry, go ahead, Jasper.
I was saying we're getting pretty close to the hour. We haven't had any questions in a while. Does anyone have any questions related to technicalities in the curve pool? Got a few DMs, but other than that,
I may end the recording and turn it over to you, so I can hop over to the other call. Do we want to put this up on ETHStaker? Do we want to ask Rocket Pool if they want to host it?
does
does anyone
Rocket
have a-
Pool host any videos? Do we have a YouTube channel?
We do have a YouTube, I believe,
It
but
may
as
be-
you can imagine, not really used.
So 2 things. I think this is most appropriate for ETHStaker, unless anyone else has any contradiction to that. Well, because Rocket Pool doesn't have a strong YouTube presence, it's most appropriate for ETHStaker. However, I do think it makes sense if the team isn't developing YouTube content for the Rocket Pool channel, then it's a community opportunity to just begin putting things out there regularly, or finding out what would be acceptable.
Ken actually just put out a proposal on the forum to finance him doing exactly what he said.
Great.
He's putting together a series of 101 guides video form.
I love Ken.
Nice.
Right,
He's
I'm
good in
gonna
front of the
switch it-
camera too.
Switch it over to you, Jasper, and then I am going to head to the POAP call, and I hope you all join us in the POAP Discord. So thanks everyone for joining.